I'm your host, Ariel Willow. Welcome to Ghost Tea Podcast, a podcast for those who seek magic. Hello, ghosties. Welcome back to Ghost Tea Podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about how to connect with your loved ones and incorporate your experiences with them into your practice if you so choose. As always, I want to put the disclaimer out there that this is just my personal opinion on things and based on the information that I have from my own practice and my own understanding of things at this time. So if we differ in opinion, that is okay because everybody has different beliefs and opinions on things. So if we disagree, then we disagree. But this is just what I found in my personal practice that I want to share with others, hopefully to help you within yours. I do also want to give the disclaimer that if you are currently very fresh into the grieving process of someone passing, whether that is a pet or a human or otherwise, I just want to encourage you to maybe hold off on listening to this episode until you are in a state where you feel as though it won't be as triggering, simply because I just want to make sure that you are in a safe place and it's not going to put you in more of a detrimental state. So if this feels like it's a little bit too overwhelming for you to listen to right now, hold off and put it on the shelf for a later time if you so choose. At the very least, just please listen with discretion. The first thing that I want to talk about is common things that happen after someone has passed. And I'm not talking about this from the spirit side of things. I'm wanting to really focus in on what happens to the people or what kind of experiences the people left behind may experience within the first couple months or even couple years after someone or a pet has passed. I do want to mention before getting into this that one, I'm not licensed in any kind of mental health field. I am not a licensed therapist or psychiatrist or psychologist. So this is based solely upon the information that I have from seeing other people go through the grieving process, as well as going through the grieving process myself with my dad having passed earlier this year. I do find that the experiences that people have of their loved ones after they pass is very much based in how they are processing the passing and or what kind of connection they had with that person when they were alive. So for example, if when someone passes, you have a lot of anger harbored towards them, or a lot of resentments, or a lot of guilt, or a lot of shame, etc., is not always, but is likely to have some effect on the experiences that you have after they have passed. So for example, if you had a lot of anger towards that person, you may have dreams where they are coming to you in dreams and asking for forgiveness, and you may not feel that you're in a space to extend that forgiveness, or may not ever feel like you're in a space to extend that. Or if you have guilt around that person's passing, or guilt around, things leading up to the passing, or not having spent a lot of time with them or something prior to them passing, that is something that could possibly come up after they pass in a way where your brain is processing it to have dreams where that person is like accusing you of, why didn't you do this? Or coming at you very angrily within dreams and things like that. And these are all normal responses for our brain to process our feelings and our emotions around that person's passing or that pet's passing, and helping us to sort all of that out on an emotional and subconscious level. The reason why I wanted to note this is because there are a lot of people who have experiences that they're very worried are actually the spirits of the loved one coming forward in a visitation that are really distressing. So dreams where that loved one comes forward and is really angry with them or yelling at them or in distress and saying they're trapped or saying they're, in pain or something like that. And that can be really distressing for someone who is processing the passing of that person or loved one or pet, right? So I just want to make sure that we're keeping that in mind as we go forward, because the processing of that passing, whether we want to believe it or not, is likely to play some part in what the experiences that we have are. Now, I am going to go a little bit into belief systems because I do think that this plays into the experiences that we have when we are experiencing, the processing of grief. And the reason why I say that is because if you come from a religious background where if someone does something against the beliefs of that religion or that belief system, then they are punished when they pass over or something like that. If you have those beliefs, it's likely to be projected onto the grieving process or experiences that you have with the spirits who come through. So, for example, I'm just going to use Christianity as an example because that is the first one that comes to mind, and it's a belief system that I personally have experience in. But within Christian beliefs, there is the belief that if someone is a follower of Christ, if they have given their, a life to Christ, then they are accepted into heaven when they pass away, right? And if they are not a follower of Christ, or if they have certain things that go against the beliefs of people who are Christian, then they are believed to go to hell or purgatory. And if you have that belief in place, or you approach the grieving process from a space of that belief, that is likely going to affect the way that you process that person's passing or the experiences that you have of them visiting. So if you're approaching from that belief system and you have a dream where someone is coming forward distressed, you may then therefore believe that they've gone to hell and they're trapped, and then that adds a whole other level to the grieving process that you're already having. In my personal belief for what happens after we die, I do go more into depth into this in the episode where I go over what I believe happens after we die, but I'll go over it a little bit here. But in my personal belief, based on the experiences that I've had with spirit and just the information that I've gathered, I personally believe that when someone dies, when they are separated from their physical body, so their physical body dies and their spirit then is therefore free of that physical body, they are met by one of their guides or a past loved one who has already passed over, or an angel or a deity. This varies, honestly, I believe, from person to person, but I do believe that we would experience one of these things, and they help that person go through that initial processing of now being a spirit rather than a physical being. And they will be with that person as they go through the process of seeing their loved ones grieve and things like that. So in my personal belief, I believe that that person is very present in a spiritual form between the time that they physically pass and the time that there is a memorial or a funeral, and then sometimes for a while after that. Usually I find that it tends to be that the spirit doesn't really start the crossing over process, quote unquote, until they find that their family members are kind of going back to everyday experiences and routines and things like that, and kind of less in that space of that initial grieving process that can be really intense and heavy. So the timeline of that obviously isn't set, because for everybody that grieving process is different, right? For some people it takes months and months and months, or even years before they really feel like they're back into their routines, and for other people it happens in a very short amount of time. And there's also certain belief systems that have set amounts of time that someone can grieve someone who is passed. Now, again, within my personal beliefs, I believe that that spirit of that person who has recently passed holds on to the beliefs that they have when they have passed until they cross over, quote unquote, to the other side. So, for example, if someone is Christian when they pass, they may hold on to the beliefs that they will either go to heaven or hell until they go into the crossing over process, right? And then once they get into that, they may have a different experience, or they may decide to exist within an experience that aligns with their beliefs. Now, that statement may differ than what I noted in the episode where I go over what I believe happens after we die, simply because my views on this are changing over time and adjusting based on the information that I have. So that may change over time. I just want to note that. But the reason why I want to state that is because this is one of the reasons that I find that there can be spirits where they feel distressed or they feel quote unquote stuck. And I say quote unquote stuck rather than just stuck because I personally don't believe that spirits can actually be stuck. I think they can perceive to be stuck. So spirits always have the option of crossing over whenever they choose. But when they decide to cross over is up to them. So if they have a belief that if they cross over, they're going to go to hell or be punished or, have some result that isn't one that they're wanting to experience, they may hesitate in crossing over, which would make sense of why there are some spirits who say, I'm stuck here, with the perception of, I have two options. I can either stay here or I can be punished, and I'm going to stay here because then I won't be punished, right? And then they may perceive that as being stuck when in reality they do have an option, but they may not realize that when they cross over, they're not necessarily going to be punished. So in my opinion, for this reason, I do believe that sometimes initial visits from past loved ones in dream time or experiences that we have with those spirits before they've actually crossed over, they may reflect the distress that the spirit is experiencing, feeling as though they may be, punished if they cross over or things like that. And this is always an opportunity for us to explain to them, you're okay, like you can cross over. If you feel stuck, like know that you have options and things like that, and encouraging them to process whatever they need to do in order to fully be on the other side, right? But that is, again, my personal beliefs of things, and that doesn't have to align with your personal beliefs if they differ. But I wanted to include that in there because although I do believe that our personal beliefs or our personal feelings around someone passing or our connection to them prior to their passing can have a big effect on what kind of interactions we may have with them or any kind of dreaming or situations and how it's perceived may be affected by that after they've passed. I do also think that that could also play a factor if it is outside of our own beliefs of, our connection with them and things like that. Getting into connecting with loved ones, which this can also apply to pets, as I believe that pets can have human voices and more verbal interactions through voices that we would understand as language that we can perceive when they pass over. Not only have I experienced people describing experiences like this happening prior to animals passing, as in those people are experiencing language communication that they are able to understand with those animals as they are still alive, but also that the boundaries of communication and things like that are kind of dissolved once the person passes over. So a lot of people ask, can you talk to a spirit who has come from a different language that you don't understand and things like that? And there are some times that a spirit will talk in their native language and you won't really be able to understand them, but sometimes they're able to communicate in other ways. And then there are also times when I've experienced spirits talking in a way that I'm able to perceive, even if they spoke a different language when they were alive and things like that. So I don't want you to think that communication with pets can't happen after they've passed because they're not able to speak a language that you can understand, because that isn't a barrier when they cross over. With that said, a lot of my recommendations for connecting with loved ones is also going to be similar to how I recommend people try to get in touch with their spirit teams, because I find that they just work for both. But regardless, let's go ahead and get into the different ways that you can possibly connect. Dreams. Okay, so when you are falling asleep at night, or prior to you falling asleep, when you're still kind of awake, you can either optionally put a note under your pillow or under your bed or on your nightstand table, or optionally speak out loud or in your head to your loved one or your pet that has passed that you want to speak to. And you can write down or say out loud or say in your head something along the lines of, Sally, I am wanting to connect with you, and I'm asking that you visit me in my dreams. And if you're unable to do tonight, I would really love to hear from you and know that you're okay. So please give me a sign within my dreams that I can understand to let me know that you're okay, right? I do encourage you to use wording where it's specifying what you're needing, but also giving them options if they're not able to show up in a certain way. So, for example, I noted, giving me signs that I would understand that are you, right? So maybe you associate that person with a type of flower, right? And they give you a dream about that flower, and it's blooming and it's doing really well and it's in healthy shape, right? That could be a sign that your loved one is showing that they're okay, but not in a way where you are seeing them the way that you were able to perceive them when they were alive. Likewise, for a pet that has passed, you might have a dream about a memory that you have of them when they were really healthy and, in a really good state and having fun and really enjoying life, right? That can also be a way for them to send you a sign that they're doing okay. And a lot of people might think, oh, well, that's just a memory that my brain is playing. But when it happens specifically after asking for a sign, I think that can be noted as a visitation, in my opinion, because would that have happened otherwise? Probably, maybe, but would we have perceived it as communication, right? And you can also ask many nights in a row or, every month, right? And ask them to come and visit you and give you a sign. So it's not something that can be a one-off or is only a one-time thing. You can only ask once, You can ask as many times as you want, but just be aware that they may show up in a way that is different than how you're hoping they might show up, but they're still showing up in a way that they are able to do at that time to let you know that they are okay. Another method that you can try is meditation. And a lot of people are really hesitant towards meditation because of the way that a lot of people portray meditation, which is commonly portrayed as someone sitting in a silent room and essentially trying to achieve no thought at all, which in my opinion is not what meditation is meant to be. Meditation, in my understanding of what meditation is meant to be, is not actually a stopping of thoughts, but instead a presence that you are able to have with that thought. So instead of pushing thoughts away, you are allowing those thoughts to come in and allowing them to flow, but without trying to hold on to them. So instead of trying to really pay attention to a thought that's coming into your head, you're allowing it to flow in a way where you're able to see it, perceive it, sit with it, and then allow it to flow however it will. So instead of, having a thought come in and getting really obsessed with it and very focused in on it, you're allowing yourself to perceive it and say, okay, I'm aware of this thought, and allowing it to pass, right? So in general, that is my understanding of what meditation is supposed to be. And from that understanding is how I'm going to approach my recommendations in regards to meditation. So in my understanding, there's two types of meditation. There is active meditation and passive meditation. So passive meditation would be more so along the lines of laying down somewhere and meditating, sitting in silence and meditating, sitting and with very calming music and meditating, or sitting or doing something where your body is mostly, if not completely still, right, while you are meditating. So that is a type of meditation you can try, but you can also try active meditation, where you are moving your body or doing some sort of activity that you are able to kind of zone out during, in order to allow your brain to be able to take up the space that it would, focusing in on what your body isn't doing. So, for example, you might find that it's easier for you to meditate as you're walking around a store, right? Because when you're walking around a store, maybe you find that you just kind of zone out and you're able to be very present with your thoughts when you're doing that because your body is doing other things. Some people find that meditating while they're on a treadmill or while they're working out or while they're going on a walk or while they're kayaking down a river might be the best way for them to meditate. So meditation is going to be something that you're going to have to find out which method works better for you, and whatever method works for you works for you. You don't have to try to fit yourself into a certain box of what you feel like you should be able to do, because that's just honestly going to take away from the experience of meditation. It's not going to make you feel comfortable because you're trying to make something work that just doesn't work for you. So it really is a whatever works for you kind of thing. But when you find out what kind of meditation system works for you and is reliable, which you may have to find that out before doing this, then from there, you can approach it similar to how you would approach dreams, where prior to going into meditation or as you're going into that meditative space, you can either sit with an item from that person or pet that you have, or you can speak out loud or in your head to that person or pet that has passed and ask them to come forward in your meditation and allow you to talk with them or interact with them, or just for them to come into your meditation and let you know that they're okay, or give you a sign that they're okay that you would understand, right? So that is another way you can try and connect. I'm a witch, okay? So I don't even have to explain why divination is one of the options that I'm going to include as a way to connect to spirit. And there are so many different types of divination that we would be here for hours if I were going through the different types of divination you can use. If you are looking for different types of divination you can explore in order to connect, I would encourage you to listen to the divination episode that was a couple months ago, so that you can have a bunch of different ideas on different ways that you can use divination to connect. But common ones that people tend to gravitate towards, or that tend to be the most accessible for people, is spirit boards, paranormal investigative tools, and cartomancy. So cartomancy would be like tarot and oracle and things like that are utilizing cards in order to connect with the spirit realm. So we'll go over spirit boards first. Spirit boards have a really negative connotation with them. I feel like there is still some taboo stuff around spirit boards, but spirit boards really are what you make of them. A lot of people, when they have their initial experiences with spirit boards, it's usually when they're a teen and just kind of, playing around with them without really having a super clear intention of why they're using it. And that really does make a difference. If you are going in to using a spirit board and just connecting with whomever comes forward is fine, right? You're kind of just opening the door to whatever wants to come in, whether it has good or bad intentions. And so I do encourage you that if you do use a spirit board and that is something you're comfortable with, first of all, choose a spirit board that you don't have negative connotations around or that you feel good using. A lot of people have negative ideas or connotations around specifically Ouija boards, and Ouija boards are considered a spirit board. So if you don't feel comfortable with specifically Ouija boards, then don't get a Ouija board to use. Use a different spirit board. There are so many different options now out there that you can feel comfortable with. So pick one that, first of all, feels good for you and doesn't give you negative feelings or doesn't feel scary to you. It feels approachable. There is a specific spirit board that I own and that I use that I have enjoyed and found good results with. If you're interested in seeing which one I use, you can click on the link in the description that is click here for my Amazon recommendations and go to the investigative tools or paranormal tools section, and that's where I have the spirit board. Obviously, I would earn commission if you were to buy it through that link, but if you don't want to do that, you can always search for it on the internet in general or find it through other sellers. But even if it's not that specific board, just at the very least, choose a board that you feel comfortable with and you feel safe utilizing. Now, I will get into protection later on, so I'm not going to go super deep into that. I'm just going to go right into how to use the board, but protection is something that I'll go over later in this episode. So if you are using a spirit board, first of all, go in with the intention to connect with a specific loved one or loved ones that you are familiar with. And the reason why I say you should specify that is because if you go into the spirit board session and you're saying, I'm wanting to connect to those who have passed from my lineage or from my family line, you might have an ancestor coming through that you don't know anything about, right? Which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but not really the intention of going into the spirit board session, right? You're looking to get in touch with a specific spirit or a specific group of spirits. So if you're wanting to get into connection with a specific group of spirits, what I would encourage you to do is have a piece of paper or some sort of document or something like that that has the names of anybody that you would want to connect with, whether that's pets who have passed or people who have passed, and then have information about those people that you can reference to. So this is something that I encourage anybody to do before they get a mediumship reading too. I know this is kind of a side note, but this is something that I recommend you do if you're ever wanting to get a mediumship reading, is have a list of people who you could possibly have come through in a mediumship session or a spirit board session. Write down their names, write down the dates that they've died, the dates that they were born, different identifying information about them so that if the medium is asking if something makes sense to you, you're able to confirm or deny, and have that ready with you when you do a spirit board session so that if the spirit is coming through and giving you information that could verify that they are who they say they are, then you're able to know that that applies to them and it is actually them coming through because it mirrors what is on the document or mirrors what you have as information about them. Okay, so you might have to talk to loved ones who knew them, like your mom or their sister or, things like that, or sit with the information that you have about that pet and experiences that you had with them so that they're able to come through that with that information and verify that they are who they say that they are. And from there, then you can open the spirit board and start communicating and asking questions to help verify that that person is who they say that they are. Ideally, it can be really nice to have someone else joining you for this session, and even better if there's someone who isn't connected to that person and is able to be not biased towards any kind of information that you'd be asking about. Because with spirit boards, we're holding the planchette and it can be really hard for us to feel like we're not manipulating it somehow. So if you feel like that is something that you're having a hard time feeling that you're not manipulating, it can be helpful to have someone else there that wouldn't know the kind of information that you're asking about from that spirit, so that any kind of information that comes through that's accurate, it wouldn't be them necessarily manipulating it because they wouldn't know the answer, right? So that can be a way that you can utilize spirit boards to get in contact. Just remember that at the end of every session, you close out the board properly and wish those spirits well and, really close it out, just because that's always a good idea. And that will be something that I'll go into more in depth in the protection section of this episode. Another form of divinatory-ish things is paranormal tools. And the reason why I say divinatory-ish is because some people wouldn't consider paranormal investigative tools as divination. I do, in the sense that it is a way to connect with the other side, and that is, in my opinion, what divination is. But However, I digress. So with paranormal tools, there are so many options. There's so many tools that you can use. I will include a link to the website that I buy a lot of my investigative tools from, and that a lot of other investigators within the industry buy their tools from. It's called ghoststop.com. And their prices are a little bit high, but that is also usually because they are putting those tools together themselves or buying them from small sellers, and then therefore the prices are going to be higher than if you were just finding them on Amazon or something like that, which there are things that you can buy from Amazon that you can use in paranormal investigations, such as EMF detectors, cat toys, like the little light up balls that cats play with that light up when they touch them. Those are really good for paranormal investigation and can be utilized within those spaces and things like that. So there are things that you can buy on online sellers outside of Ghost Stop if their prices are a little bit high for you. So I did obviously mention the cat toys, light up like cat toys that are the little balls that whenever they're moved or something like that, they light up. And those can be great options for someone who just wants something quick and easy and something that is fairly easy for spirit to manipulate and work with, right? It can also be a great replacement or option if you can't get something like a REM pod or an EMF detector of some kind. And if you already have them because you have cats, that's always a plus. You've already got an investigative tool. But like I said, there are the options of EMF detectors, which EMF detectors are used as regular tools within construction and stuff like that. But obviously they are also used within the paranormal field. But the other one that people often ask me about is spirit boxes. And I won't really get into what spirit boxes are because I believe that I have gone over it pretty deeply in other episodes. But essentially what a spirit box is a modified radio where it cycles through different radio stations and you're looking for interactions or sentences or things like that would happen over multiple channels on the radio, which wouldn't be normal if we were just picking up on radio interference, right? So spirit boxes can be really great. I have a spirit box myself. I have the SB11 spirit box, and that has given me really good results so far. I've had it for years and years, and I've always had good experiences with it. I will say that if you are someone who easily gets overstimulated by repeating sounds or white noise, this might not be a great option for you because even I can get overwhelmed by it, and I'm not someone who would consider myself as super sensitive to overstimulating noises, but I do have to say that there are times during sessions where I'm using it where I have to take a break because it's just way too overstimulating. But there are ways to mitigate that. I haven't been able to set it up on my own spirit box, but there are ways to take down the static noise in the background when you're using it. I just haven't done it myself, but there are ways to do that. But within my own personal experiences with spirit boxes, not only have I used them to connect to human spirits, but I've also used them to talk with my spirit team. I've also used them to talk with my deities that I work with and other things. So it's not just useful in terms of talking to spirit. It can also be useful for talking to deities and your spirit team as well. So it's not just a one-use kind of thing, which is always a plus. And in addition, under divinatory methods, I do want to go over tarot and oracle. Oracle might be easier for people who are not familiar with cartomancy because oracle is more so self-interpretive or more lenient in the meanings rather than tarot, as tarot has more of a set meaning for each card. But if you were to use tarot, which I'll pull out my tarot deck and use an example, I'll just pull a random card. So let's say that you are connecting with someone who has passed and you pull the Knight of Pentacles. The Knight of Pentacles could sometimes represent someone who is a slower mover. So this maybe could imply that the person, when they were alive, moved really slowly. Maybe they had, something that prevented them from being able to walk quickly or something like that. Maybe they were someone who was very logical in their approach to things. Maybe they were very practical, things like that. Or maybe you get the World card. The World card could imply graduation of some kind, or an ending of a chapter. Maybe they are trying to bring up that there's a ending happening. Someone's getting a divorce. Someone's graduating from high school or college. Someone's getting married, right? Like some sort of ending of a chapter or things like that. It could also indicate that they are aware that they have passed and they're acknowledging that ending of their physical existence and the start of them being solely in a spiritual existence. So things like that. But that might be more the way that someone who is more familiar with tarot might approach it. And it can be sometimes difficult for someone who doesn't understand tarot as much or isn't familiar with it at all. So what I would encourage you to do if you are going to use specifically a tarot deck, or honestly even a card deck or an oracle deck, is use it as more of a yes or no system by having the upright cards indicating yes and the reversed cards indicating no. That might be something that's easier as a way to approach it as someone who's not as familiar with it. And then once you've gotten to a place where you feel like you've established enough of a connection to where you're getting pretty accurate results with just the yes or no, you can then kind of more so incorporate the specific meanings of the cards or more detailed meanings from the cards that come forward. So that's an option as well. And also, if you're wanting yes or no options with divination, coins and dice can be really great options. You can have heads equal yes and tails equal no on coins, or if you're wanting to use dice, you can have each number on the dice indicate a different response if you want that, or you can have it be that even numbers equal yes and odd numbers equal no. Right? So you can use those as well, and those might be really nice tools for you to use to know, one, that it's less likely that you would be influencing it somehow or things like that. So that can also be good options as well. And when we get into cartomancy as well, I do want to mention that there are card decks out there that are specifically around connecting with spirits or connecting with past loved ones. I don't personally have a deck that I can recommend at this time that would be specifically geared towards connecting with your loved ones or things like that. So I won't give any deck recommendations in that regard, but I have seen them out there. So if you're looking for that, or if you're wondering if those exist, they do, but I just haven't personally used one myself, so I can't speak on the accuracy or how effective those are on a personal level. The other option for connecting with loved ones is asking for signs. And this honestly is my main recommendation for people wanting to connect with their loved ones because of so many reasons. One of the reasons is, one, that it's not something that is as easy for you to accidentally manipulate. And two, it gives you physical proof of that past loved one trying to connect. But also, it's something where you can have a more tangible piece of communication, right? So for some people, they have something that they connect with or that reminds them of that person. So for example, maybe with a past loved one, you have a certain song that you connect with them, right? That makes you think of them, that is important to you in regards to them or things like that. And this doesn't have to be a song that that person is aware that you connected with them. So like it could be a song that they really liked, or it can be a song that you associate with that person, whether it's one that you associate with them after they passed, or maybe something that played at their funeral or memorial, or maybe it's something that when you knew them when they were alive that you would always listen to and think of them. So one of the ways that you can use this as a sign is saying out loud or in your head, or even writing a letter to your loved one that you keep in a special place, whether that's a little shrine for them or just in a special place for you. Then you can say, hey, whenever I hear this song, I'm going to see it as a sign that you're coming through to let me know that you're okay. And especially if it's a song that isn't part of your regular rotation of listens, because, a lot of people use Spotify and Apple Music or their iTunes library or things like that to listen to music. And it's not the same as it was before when we would listen to radios, right? Where that song is more random to come on if it's not a popular song. So it can sometimes be hard to see it as a sign because you're like, well, it's, something that is in my rotation of regular songs that I listen to and things like that. But if you have 1,001 songs in your library of songs that you have saved on a platform and you put it on shuffle and that song comes on after you've asked them to give you a sign that they're okay or that they're around you, the likelihood of that is fairly low, right? And the more songs you add to your library, the less likely that song is to come on. So I personally would see that as a sign that they are saying, yeah, I'm okay, or yeah, I'm with you, or yeah, I want to let you know that I'm here. Outside of songs, you can have certain things. So maybe you associate a certain bird with them, and maybe you wake up in the morning and you ask them to send you a sign that they're around you, and that random type of bird comes up to your window or something, or maybe you see it on a walk to work, or maybe you see it on your drive, or maybe it's in an ad that you see on your way to work, or maybe someone has a tattoo of that bird, or maybe someone is talking about that kind of bird when you're walking by them on the street. Like, there's so many different ways that spirit can be giving us signs and messages that we might not even pay attention to on an everyday level. So these are things that you can ask for in specifics that can make it an easy way for you to connect with spirit so that you know that they're there. Now, with most communication where we're asking for signs, what I usually recommend is that you have a certain time period when you are asking for that sign to be given to you so that you know that that's what that sign is for. And I would encourage you to do that with connecting with spirit as well, just because then it's not likely to show up 5 years from the time that you've asked for it, right? But if you have certain things that you want them to just send you as a sign whenever, as a sign that they're coming through or just saying hello, then you can have those. But in addition to that, you can also have ones that you have for a certain amount of time. So, for example, you might have a certain song that you associate with someone who has passed, and whenever it comes on, you're like, oh, okay, hi, like I'm recognizing that you're coming forward or that you're wanting to acknowledge that you're here, right? But then you might also likewise have a certain animal that you associate with them or something like that that you ask for specifically, or something that you don't even associate with them specifically that you can ask for them to send you within a certain amount of time to let you know that they're okay. When you're asking for a certain sign that is not associated with them, though, what I encourage you to do, especially if you're doing it within a certain amount of time, is asking for something that you wouldn't typically see during your everyday. So, for example, if you pass by a clock tower every morning on your way to work, I wouldn't ask them to send you a clock, right? Or if you see an advertisement with a hippo on it every day when you go to work, I wouldn't ask them to send me a hippo because that's something that I know that I'm going to see every day, and it's something that I can anticipate seeing and then therefore perceive as an answer to the request, right? So ideally try to give it a certain amount of time. So, please send me a sign within the next 5 hours, or before I get home from work today, or before I go to bed tonight, right? That gives you a specific time period that you are going to be looking for that sign. and trying to be aware of it. Because again, they could send it to you 5 years from now if you don't give a specific timeline. And then you can follow up with what it is that you're wanting to see. So please send me a sign within the next 5 hours, and please have it be a pink hippo. If you are coming through for me and you are letting me know that you're okay, please send me a pink hippo within the next 5 hours. And then see if it shows up. It might be on someone's t-shirt. It might be in a cartoon ad that you see. It might be in an advertisement that you pass by. It might be something that someone is talking about around you that you hear. It might be a tattoo that someone has. It might be a little keychain that someone has, right? There are so many different ways that that could come through that would apply. So just be aware that when you give that timeline, that can help you to know when you can be looking for that sign specifically and what it would be in response to. And that's really especially comforting if you have a specific question that you're wanting them to answer rather than just letting you know that they're around or that they're okay. Okay, so that can be an option as well. A question that I get asked a lot as a medium, but also just from people who are wanting to connect with their loved ones, or even honestly just any spirits or any deities or things like that, is do I need to set up protection before I connect with my loved one? And you might hate that my answer is just, it depends. Because I say that a lot, but it really does. Because if you feel like you want protection, if you feel like you need protection, then absolutely by all means do set up protection. But if you don't feel like you need it, I don't think it's necessary, especially when it is a spirit that you would be familiar with. I don't think that it's necessary for you to have any kind of protection set up if you don't feel that you need it. However, if you are wanting to set up protection or you're wanting to minimize the feeling of being unprotected, I would encourage you to utilize a couple different methods, or just one method, honestly, that feels good for you to use. So if you are someone who is religious or has a certain belief system that you follow, you can wear things from that belief system that would be protective. So for some people, if they follow the Christian religion, that might be a cross. Or for people in a certain belief system, that might be a talisman or an amulet that they program or that they have connected or specified for protection. Another option is utilizing certain herbs or incenses that are specifically used for protection. So this could be a custom blend or a blend that you buy at a store or online, and you can burn that incense or burn those herbs or even boil them on your stovetop in a simmer pot. Just put water in a pan, put some herbs or ingredients that are associated with protection in there, as long as they're not poisonous, right? We want to make sure that it's not poisonous. Don't poison yourself. But basil is one that is associated with protection. You can also put clove in there. That's also connected to protection. Things like that. You can also use common sage, not white sage, but common sage or mountain sage or things like that. That is also protective. But things like that you can put in a simmer pot or burn as an incense prior to connecting with your loved ones. Another option is Florida water, which Florida water is not associated with any particular practice or culture, but it's found in various different ways in a lot of different ones. So despite the name, it isn't water from Florida. It's simply a floral scented water. Sometimes it will include certain florals that are specifically associated with cleansing or protection and things like that, but it doesn't have to. But typically the belief behind it is that evil spirits don't like the scent of floral things or citrus. So oftentimes Florida water has a base of citrus and floral scents in it to dispel or discourage or try to kind of remove any kind of evil or ill-intended spirits or entities in the space or on the person. So you can use Florida water in a spray bottle. I like to put it in a spray bottle because it's convenient. Or you can also put it in a roller ball, which I also do. That is really convenient. And just wear that before you start communicating with the spirit. There are also a lot of really accessible and easy to find protection stones and crystals that you can carry in your pocket or hold with you or have in your bag when you're, going about your day or connecting with spirit specifically. Or another option is if you're using a spirit board, like we were talking about before, you can set up these stones around yourself as you're interacting with these spirits or around the board that you're using as kind of a protective barrier, quote unquote. But common protection stones or crystals is going to be obsidian. Obsidian comes in so many different options. So there are a bunch of different kinds like snowflake obsidian, more transparent obsidians, rainbow obsidian, things like that. So there's so many different options. All of them are considered protective. There is also black tourmaline, which is also very protective. There's also onyx and jet, which are protective. In my personal opinion, in my experience with them, I don't find them to be as protective as obsidian and black tourmaline, but it is an option if that's what you have available. A lot of people also use selenite, or some people say selenite, but in my personal opinion, again, I don't feel like this is protective as much as it is clearing and cleansing. So that's just my personal opinion on selenite. I just don't find that the energy feels protective the way that obsidian and black tourmaline does. But if that is what makes you feel comfortable and safe, then by all means use that, or you can use it in addition to whatever protection crystals you're using it as well. Another option, if you don't want to use any of the other options, there's also binaural beats that are protection binaural beats that you can be playing as you are connecting to spirits or doing sessions. You can also optionally say a prayer or a hymn before you connect if that is something that feels comfortable for you, or recite some sort of, saying or invocation of protection from a deity or an entity or an energy prior to connecting if that also feels comfortable for you. You can also have pieces of paper or items that you put or draw or carve into protective sigils into, or protective symbolism into, that you carry on you or you hold on you or you have within a space that you're using to connect, that can also be protective. And obviously this isn't an exhaustive list of what you can do to set up protection prior to connecting, but those are a couple ideas that you can utilize if you want and kind of play around with and see what works for you. And you might have good or bad experiences with some of them or all of them, so it's going to take kind of an adjustment period because not all protection techniques feel good for everybody. So find one that feels good for you and that you feel confident in using, and then use that in your experiences. Something that I want to go over before I close out this episode is something that I feel like is really important to mention, which is, what if I don't get a response if I'm trying to connect with a past loved one? Not only can this be something that is extremely painful to experience, but also just kind of, in my opinion, extends the grieving process, because grief is us processing that we can't interact with that person in a way that we used to, in a physical way. We can't hear their voice. We can't feel their hugs, right? I'm getting emotional just because I'm thinking of my dad, right? So I can totally understand being in a situation where you are trying to connect and you're not getting a response and feeling heartbroken about that, because that can be really, really hard. Which is also one reason why in the beginning of this episode, I encouraged people to have this be an episode that they listen to after they've kind of gone through the initial processing of grief from someone passing, because within the first months, years, sometimes even decades of grieving, depending on your processing and how long it takes for you to feel like it's settled a little bit, it can be really difficult to approach it in a way where you are not desperate for a response or an answer or a sign. And there's nothing wrong with really, really wanting an answer or a sign or some way to communicate with your loved ones. But there are also so many reasons why this could be happening. One of the reasons why it could be happening is that maybe we are so desperate to have some sort of contact that we are accidentally and not even intentionally missing subtle signs that are coming through, or subtle messages, or subtle ways that they're trying to communicate with us. It's difficult to know exactly what they are experiencing from the spiritual end of things trying to communicate with us. They might go through a processing time where they're trying to figure out how to be in a spiritual body, and they're trying to figure out how to cause signs to happen or how to communicate with us. And it might be easier or less difficult for them. So I don't know. Maybe they're having a little bit of difficulty figuring that out, especially if they have newly passed. But not only that, but we can also, like I said, be missing subtle signs or have a certain expectation of signs that we're looking for. And if it's not in that certain way, then we're perceiving it as them not connecting with us. So, for example, if we really want them to come through in a dream so that we can see them in a visual way, we might be missing signs that they're giving to us of birds that they liked outsides, or music that they liked when we're listening to the radio and things like that, because it's not the kind of communication that we're wanting or expecting or looking for. So it can sometimes be that the signs, the communication, the messages that they're giving to us are kind of flying under the radar, not even intentionally, but unintentionally being missed. But overall, what I do want to mention is that if you aren't getting the kind of responses that you're wanting, give yourself some time, maybe step away from trying to initiate something for a month or a week or a couple days even, and just give yourself some time to step away from it and come back to it with fresh eyes or a fresh perspective. Sometimes that could be helpful, but at the very least, what I want you to know is that if you are not getting communication right away, or if you're not getting communication despite your efforts, it does not mean that your loved one does not want to talk to you, because loved ones, especially when we are wanting to make contact and we are purposefully trying to take steps to do so, even if we aren't, but we miss them and they know that we miss them, they are not going to purposefully ignore you or try to not interact with you. Spirit wants to give us the ability to move forward with our lives and process their passing and be able to be at peace. And I don't think that any spirit would purposefully try to create distress for us by withholding connection. So, like I said, if you're not getting results right away, give yourself some time to step away from it and then come back later with fresh eyes, fresh ears, and hopefully a easier time noticing any kind of signs that we're asking for and things like that. With that said, I will close out this episode just saying that you probably aren't listening to this because you haven't lost someone. So whoever you've lost that you're trying to get in contact with, whether it's a pet or a family member or someone you knew, I just want to say I'm sorry for your loss. And I hope that this episode gave you some ways that you can connect to them. And I really hope that the ways that I've given you to connect are ways that you use and are effective for you to make that connection with spirit. And I wish all of your past loved ones peace in their eternal rest. Thank you for being a listener of Ghost Tea Podcast, whether you are a veteran to Ghost Tea Podcast or you are a newcomer. I just want to say thank you for being here. Thank you for your support in listening. If you're wanting to support further, you can subscribe to the podcast on Spotify to listen to exclusive subscriber episodes. That link can be found in the description. But also, if you are wanting to book a session with me, you can do so with the link to my website in the description below as well, which is www.arielwillow.com. If you're wanting to learn more about the podcast, you can also go to my website, arielwillow.com/podcast, to learn more about the podcast and also see what other platforms it's on. Thank you so much, and I will talk to you all very soon. Bye.